ahead with our agenda. The last item on the regular agenda is a presentation by the CRA regarding an overview of the artificial reef project.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This issue was initially brought to our attention by Commissioner Shuham, and it's called the Thousand Mermaid Project. The Thousand Mermaid Project is headed by Evan Snow, and immediately upon the idea being introduced, and it's basically a project that attempts to coordinate with local municipalities the installation of artificial reefs along the coast. When the idea first came up, it appeared that the artificial reef installation could only be done in fairly deep water. And the thing about doing it in 40 to 50 or 70 feet of water is that, you can only get there by boat or through some sort of a charter, et cetera. So from that point, we wanted to study whether there would be opportunity to do it in a shallow shoreline area where it might be more similar to locations like Red Reef in Boca Raton, where you see families and young kids with their snorkels and masks, enjoying the reef. So we brought in ATM, and Dr. Mike Jenkins, who's here with us this morning, has a presentation of his findings with respect to that. And it appears that we have identified as many as 4 locations along the shoreline where this can happen. So Mike will start the presentation. We also have Evan Snow from Thousand Mermaids, and Evan is going to share some of that information with us this morning as well. And I should point out that we are attempting to piggyback on an adjoining municipality with respect to how they put out a competitive process to bring in the Thousand Mermaid project into their community. If we can do that, that will make it easier for us. But actually timing, I think we're going to be okay, because we can't do any of this until after the beach renourishment project is completed, which is likely to be at least 2 years away. So we have time to think about this and figure it out. And I should also point out, I don't want to be remiss in thanking Bruce Wilkie, who's the head of our beach safety operations. He's here this morning, and we have obviously been coordinating with him because we want to make sure that wherever we do put this artificial reef, that we have adequate protection, and that they feel that they can cover those types of issues. So without further.
So let's go ahead to, is Evan Snow there, George?
Yes, he is. I'd like to bring Evan forward to share his information. Again, I want to reiterate that Evan is here this morning for informational purposes only. We may end up having to put out a competitive process through procurement for these services, but we are also, as I stated earlier, we're looking at the possibility of being able to piggyback with an adjacent municipality that we believe has gone through a competitive bidding process to enable us to piggyback on that effort. So with that, I'd like to acknowledge Evan Snow and the folks from the Thousand Mermaid Project.
Thank you, George. My name, for the record, is Evan Snow. I'm the Executive Director of the Thousand Mermaids Artificial Reef Project, which is a Florida not-for-profit 501c3.
And for the record, I'm Stacy Brown, CFO and Education Director for 1000 Mermaids and Ocean Rescue Alliance.
And we want to thank you guys for engaging Mike. Obviously, Mike has tons of knowledge and experience working in these projects. We have experience constructing and deploying these projects, and we feel that they'll be beneficial if it's at the shallower depth in the longer time period that it's going to take for that to get permitted, or in the intermediary, if we're able to deploy them at the depths that the county and the Army Corps of Engineers have currently permitted, which is generally at the 40-foot depth. I understand from our preliminary conversations with the CRA, obviously there's a lot of consideration on ecotourism and making it an attractive draw. Thankfully, those benefits will still be there at whichever depth we choose. And we're more considerate of the environmental benefits and considerations. Can we get some of the slides? Oh, there's a clicker? How about that? We'll just go through a couple things, and I won't take up too much of your time here. But we're more considerate about coral restoration, providing habitat for fish. Reefs serve many invaluable resources, but providing habitat for juvenile fish to seek protection from predation so that they can grow to adulthood so we can restock fish populations is one of our biggest considerations. If you could go to another slide there. There's a bunch of different configurations between the different types of modules that we construct. Some of the modules are purely for art, but all of the modules, and artificial reefs, we call them modules, are engineered with countless benefits in terms of providing the habitat for fish, providing not only the draw for divers from the ecotourism, but other benefits in terms of mitigating storm surges and wave energies, and literally dozens and dozens of benefits, research opportunities, the list goes on, and which we're all pretty much in agreement here so far that supporting our natural reefs that are unfortunately dying by supplanting with artificial reefs that also prove a valuable benefit for an ecotourism draw, user-generated content, marketing, press, those are all benefits, and those are all great reasons to create a reef. And one of the considerations here, obviously, is regarding the height of the waves at the depth that Mike and the city would like to propose at the shallower depth. We will work within the county's permitting, the Army Corps engineers permitting, and all of the federal requirement permitting to have the reefs be a certain height, that they comply with all of the graphics and all of the permitted requirements so that they could safely be deployed, of course. We're using some of the latest technology in terms of virtual reality and scanning now. It's we're still casting, we're still sculpting these reefs by hand, but we're using to provide more precise and concise, complex designs and minimize. There's a lot of loss when you deal with these sculptures at 3,500 pounds. So we're trying to be more efficient. We're using the latest technology. And it's another way that we're actually at the intersection of art, science, and technology, which is very interesting. We're presenting this at the Florida Artificial Reef Summit this week, the International Coral Reef Symposium in July next year in Bremen, Germany. And this portion within itself is driving a lot of press and interest from a STEM type of perspective, which we also pass along to the kids. And I'll have Stacy talk about when we get there. But this part, I'm going to have Stacy talk about before that, about the actual habitat.
Yes, so all of our reefs, the low-profile modules, example that you see here is where we're trying to really mimic the natural reef. We're not looking to create something that is outlandishly, outside the norm of what you would see, because we feel that's what obviously draws the fish. That's what creates an interesting zone for the divers and the snorkelers. And so these are developed and continually improved upon with each new design. So we add different spaces inside. Later on, we'll talk about the coral lock, which is something that I believe someone addressed regarding outplanting. So in the 40-foot zone, we can do things with coral, and it's something we would encourage, although in the snorkel area, because of the sedimentation and the influx of sand, it just will end up probably just scouring off. So it's kind of like a waste of effort. But this is one example of the types of modules that we're going to put out. And
these are, if you could see the image on the right, they're engineered in such a way. Our reef builder is an architectural cast stone expert. He's been creating and deploying reefs in Palm Beach County and beyond for 30 years. He's a FDOT vendor. He has developed the actual concrete to be obviously super strong, but they have very thin veneers, but it's still very strong and ductile like steel. So the way that when we talk about these micro and macro habitats, we're creating little crevices within the base all throughout the reef. And when I say that's where the juvenile fish, the baby fish, that's where they seek protection. When the reefs die, they're not able to seek the same protection. Not going to get into overfishing or any of those things, but this is one of our biggest considerations, is providing the habitat for fish so we can help replenish fish stock populations and counts, which is another benefit of the reefs. These are just some examples of 9 to 12 months post-deployment.
Yeah. So the both pictures on the left and the far right are 9 months after we've deployed our modules. This is the Riviera Beach site up at 40 foot, and this unfortunately is accessible by boat. But in the middle, that's 12 months. So you can see already there's sponges encrusting on there. That's what we ideally want to see. We don't want to see in the long term modules that are just barren concrete. It's not enjoyable, it's not what we want, and it's not what the fish want. So ultimately there's phases within that, and the center is more like what it looks like now at the Riviera Beach site.
And these were deployed August 21st of 2019. From a coral growth perspective on an artificial reef structure, so you're not actually seeing the inevitable process of what generally takes anywhere from up to 80 years to grow coral. This is some of the preliminary steps in terms of some of the algae, some of the benthic growth. These are the precursors to coral growing. Our reef builder has developed a proprietary coating material that he coats the reefs with that encourages and enhances the preliminary growth and ultimately the coral larvae, the babies of the coral, to adhere to the structure of the modules so that in addition to the coral that we're going to be growing with our outplanting and other mechanisms, we're going to be creating an environment for coral growth on top of coral growth. And these were very encouraging. We do a lot of monitoring dives, a lot of continual research. We've worked with Palm Beach County to revive their reef research team. Monitoring is very important, documenting the process, time-stamping it. So this is what I would say. I just wanted to preface by saying that's not actual coral growth yet. We'd be foolish by claiming it is. These are the very encouraging preliminary steps at 9 to 12 months, and hopefully we'll be seeing corals growing if the conditions allow for it.
And this is the coral lock that I'd referenced previously. The coral lock is designed again by Reef Cells by Chris O'Hare, and it allows for us to be able to outplant those corals. So if a permit exists, then we're able to coordinate and then outplant coral. So sometimes in a storm event, coral will be dislodged, knocked off of the reef structure. We would be able to request the permitting from the state and be able to then take coral and transplant it to our reefs or affix it back to the natural reef if possible. So that's where it's very important that we have that ability. In the Keys right now, we're working with CRF and Corps to study the outplanting ability to expedite, instead of planting one coral at a time like they do on the reef right now, putting out the center module, we call it our flower module or mini module, putting those out at a time. So you can see right there's 5, 10, even 20 corals that are able to be put out at a time. So it's really expediting that ability to restore the reef systems if they're damaged in any kind of event.
And for those that might not be familiar with the efforts of NSU and this coral fragging technology, this is the most encouraging breakthrough that they've developed in terms of saving the corals. There was very briefly a leading scientist from Moat that in the lab accidentally dropped a living coral that he had permitting for. It split into little pieces. He split it even further, and then he found through research that little coral fragment will regrow at a 40 to 50 times faster rate than corals generally take to reproduce, which could take up to 80 years. Getting those coral fragments out there has been the problem. The leading method is our friends at University of Miami take a nail, metal, a zip tie, plastic, and epoxy, and they nail onto the seafloor, onto the reef, and then they zip tie the little coral fragment and they place it out there. That's been the method that University of Miami, everybody's been doing. This method eliminates the nail, metal, eliminates the zip tie, and it allows us to outplant the coral fragments directly onto the reef that we're embedding a threaded receiver that, if you can see the empty holes. So those are where we're able to, with an easy twist of a diver's hand, now deploy more coral fragments, the supercorals, faster, easier, with safer materials than ever before. We're already currently working with the county on the permitting to be able to outplant those. There's a lot of federal protections. There's a lot of disease effects. This will take time. The process has already started, thankfully, from our ongoing efforts. Stacy's a former NSU marine biology graduate, and we are working with all of the major governing entities, the DEP, the FWC, Army Corps, everybody's involved, because we have been putting these in the ocean already. So I just wanted to clarify. That one, basically, the coral lock, we're not able to outplant, for the record, coral now, but when coral is able to be outplanted, that'll be another tourism draw. Come stay in Hollywood and outplant coral and dive. And then the public art, obviously, is the main draw, one of the big draws, that this is how we're able to get not only the attention of the divers, but how we're able to help raise awareness about the issues plaguing our reefs. Mermaid, there's so many countless tales of Siren's Call and how they used to lure in the sailors, but we're using the Mermaid to really get people to think what's going on below the water and why are the reefs important. Unfortunately, the reefs are out of sight, out of sight, out of mind for so many people. Even if you don't live on the water, even if you don't live on the coast, they're our first line of defense and first barrier against storm surges. If and when the reefs die, it's pretty much concluded we'll be underwater. If we now use art as a way to problem solve and help restore our reefs, which there's a lot of other core restoration considerations that we're not getting into in this presentation with regards to what we're putting out there, hopefully we're planting a public art sculpture garden adjoining forest to the forest that's unfortunately dying underwater, which is the natural reef. And they say the best time to plant the tree was yesterday. The second best time to plant the tree was 20 years ago. We're trying to plant an underwater sculpture garden forest to, yes, have it be a diving site and a great sculpture garden and ecotourism draw, but we're more considerate about the environmental benefits and really the bigger picture. The art will provide the return on the investment for the CRA dollars. It's going to have a clear path. We already have white papers and research studies going on the increase in diving tourism. We'll be working with the hotels and with the CRA and with the FRLA to work with the concierges, to work with the front desk, to really quantify how many people are coming here to dive and see these reefs, and then use that data to produce valuable ecotourism studies that we're using art here in Broward County and Hollywood, Florida, as a way to not only raise awareness, but problem solve, support the local dive shops, support the local dive industry. And these reefs, or coral reefs, in Southeast Florida provide a $7 billion economic impact that supports 70,000 jobs. When the reefs go, it's going to be, yep, that's it.
And then on the bottom are some more examples of different sculpture options that Chris O'Hare has built with reef cells. He has done the Firehawk Memorial Reef and West Palm Beach. He has significant structures in Peanut Island Trail and also the Blue Heron Bridge. So if you're familiar with those, they're very, very nice draws, and a lot of people travel for them. So even though we're 1,000 Mermaids project, we don't just do mermaids. We are interested in other things. We want to expand upon that, and that's why the newest entity is Ocean Rescue Alliance, where we feel that it's more impactful to engage everyone and incorporate different options into the mix. So we're not just mermaids. And then our citizen science program is Coral Rangers. I work with the local high schools, middle schools. I have triplet sons in high school, so I really need something for them to do. So this was great, great ability and great timing. So I thought this would be wonderful. I've been a diver since I was 16. Want to get anyone else out there interested and engaged in marine science and just in science in general. So it's a great opportunity. I work with the Urban Farming Institute in Oakland Park, and we have a little reef set up there. And the hopes are to be able to teach all the students fragging, water chemistry, all of those different things. And then of course we do beach cleanups, pier cleanups, and we do a lot of citizen science engagement, trying to get them actively engaged. And then we were able to get 8 students certified for scuba diving last year as well. So that was really interesting. So great opportunities to be able to work with everyone. I know you guys do a lot here with the MEEC. I work with them a lot, and with Free RCs, I work with them. So we do a lot of stuff with the local citizens.
So this is the permitted drop zone that the county and the Army Corps of Engineers have outlined for our area, understandably. These are what they say is safe for us to deploy now. The shallower sites are permittable. They just have to go through the permitting process, which Mike and our team and the CRA team actually began discussing in March, I believe. So the county is aware of our desire, and we've already began preliminary conversations with the adjoining municipality George mentioned that we are working on reef with to do shallow reefs as well. But there's also another reef site we didn't or you guys didn't mention previously. There's a Hollywood Rec Trek. That's a little bit deeper. The county told us we could deploy there, but we feel more comfortable at the 40-foot depth. It does provide the diving benefits. You can't necessarily access it as easy without a boat. You could if you were an experienced diver, but from our experience, from the science perspective, from the county's perspective, from the Army Corps of Engineers perspective, they are comfortable and allow federally for us to put reefs in those permitted zones now, but we will be glad to go through the permitting and procurement processes. We know it'll probably be 2022 realistically, before we'd even get to a decision, and we're glad to work with you on those processes, but that's what we're looking at for Hollywood.
And so in the other slides, E2 is the zone that I'm referencing, which is the 40-foot zone. And that's comparable to the zone that we have right now in Riviera Beach. So, don't know why this is so blurry, sorry for that, but so this is a 40-foot estimate. So we're proposing 25 modules. 25 modules could be anywhere from a 4-foot to a 6-foot or 8-foot size. And then we'd have 8 sculptures on there, and the sculptures could be anything. So we were speaking about turtles. I'm envisioning something like the module on the left, but more low profile and make it look like a turtle. And then if we wanted to do that later for the snorkel area, we could then stack some of those modules and make it a more interesting, like boulder option, but with the turtles and with the sculptures, as opposed to just putting limestone boulders out now. Also included with this is our land-based selfie stations and also land-based modules. We envision those being more of the photo opportunities and the public engagement, so they can see what's going on, even if they're not ever going to dive the site. So we think that's very, very important. And we'd like to incorporate educational information about what's going on with our oceans within those modules. And we can make those so they're roaming different things. So they're not stationary. We can move them around from downtown to the pier, or downtown to the beach, and wherever you guys would like. And then also within that, I'm proposing 4 citizen science opportunities. Right now we do bleach watch training, pier cleanups, beach cleanups, so any of those types of community engagement activities I would like to incorporate as well within this proposal.
And these are just, these are obviously perspective, and we would work within the creative direction. We have the creative direction to create any type of artwork. This photo on the right represents a selfie tail underwater, but we also, if you've seen any of our press or social medias, we have them above water, and they obviously don't have as much growth on there, and we'll show some slides shortly.
Yes, and this option is the same thing as as a smaller reef. This is just 50 modules with 15 sculptures, so it's a much larger impact zone. And then the option 3 is what we're envisioning for the snorkel trail. So we're proposing about a 15-foot zone. That way we'd be able to have a substantial reef and still have that above water clearance. And the same thing with these selfie stations, land-based options, modules, and then also the Coral Rangers components as well. So these are our land-based modules. The one on the right is a selfie tail, the selfie station. We just had this at an event over the weekend at WMODA. It's very fun. People stand behind it, take their picture. It's just a cool little thing that people really like to do. The parents come in and you'll see like the kids being propped up as mermaids and the grandfathers on the ground, like making sure that the daughter's in the right spot or whatever. So it's really, really fun. And then on the left-hand side is just an option of what we could potentially do for signage to be able to really show that integration between the
And the one on the right, if you notice, it has a backdrop. There's some infographics there. We really encourage people to obviously take the photo, tag, and share it, but then also look up what you're taking a photo of. It's not just the photo op. There's more information and benefits to it. That was actually taken at the Hard Rock, and we actually have Hard Rock Hotel, and which is in Hollywood. I know, not in the CRA district. And we have had ongoing conversations with Redline Media Group about doing what you guys are kind of envisioning in terms of having the Hard Rock guitar be a reef that could be seen when you fly in from above. Those conversations, understandably, COVID happened, but we'd be glad to revisit those as a potential funding mechanism. In addition to, we are a 501c3, so we can go for grants, and the adjoining the adjoining municipality city manager is very interested in going to Tallahassee for more funding. Anna Garcia and Dania. We're working with Dania for the other reef.
And so these are just the renderings of what we could do underwater. The one on the left is a very ornate sculpture option that would take a little bit to get to that complexity. The ones on the right are actually examples of what we currently have The bottom left is actually Riviera Beach site, so that's what it looks like when you're diving it. And then the one on the right is one of the more complex, newer renditions of our modules. And then, of course, the one in the back is the same one as the prior photo. The one on the bottom left here is actually our site. So this is what it looks like when you're diving our site. This is about 3 months after the modules were placed. So they look really different now, but this is kind of what it looks like. You swim up, dive into the site, and then you see just this array of different modules. We would prefer to have them closer together. The way the deployment happened up there, it needed to be farther apart. But in the future, I would like for them to more look like the one on the right, where you can visibly see and swim from one to the other and check things out that are happening. The one in the background on the right is that low profile that I showed you earlier. That one is going to be going out in our Riviera Beach site soon, and it'll be very interesting to be able to see how the fish interact with that.
And yeah, just, we've been fortunate. Thankfully, people have taken on to the project. So we have had some very good press. The top of it has been Travel and Leisure, which gets 40 million views a week, but Palm Beach Post has been great to us, WLRN, NPR, local magazines, publications. So it's a very compelling story using art as a problem solver. The coral reefs are in really bad shape. I think there's more interest in coral restoration right now than there's ever been before, so this is a good time to have a project like this. And these are just some examples of previous projects that have been deployed by our reef builder. And this is our team. Yeah.
Well, Evan, thanks so much. This is great. I love the creativity and the initiative here from the nonprofit perspective, and all that you're pursuing. I think all to the end is benefit of Florida and beyond for all the reasons that are mentioned. Whether it's the environmental and oceanographic benefits, creating fish habitats, to the arts and tourism and everything. It's a beautiful tie-in, and really it's what people visiting here think about when they come to South Florida. They think about, I'm going to a tropical place, and water is central to it. And so this would help elevate the city of Hollywood's position as an exciting ecotourism destination, one that could create additional business coming out of Hollywood to have those tourists and even the locals engage with the water even more than they do now. So it's just a great direction to head in. George, I can't see the dais, so I'll defer to you. Any commissioners or board members want to speak right now?
Yes. Kev, are you going to?
Go ahead.
So thank you very much. I have quite a few questions for you. I actually was lucky enough because I did Leadership Hollywood through the Chamber, and one of our month visits was at NOVA to study the coral loch when it was really in its infancy. So it's an amazing, amazing process. I got to actually start a little coral starter plant or whatever they called it. One question, I just have a couple questions about how you're operating now. So one, George had mentioned potentially some procurement restrictions, but are there other entities that you're aware of that are combining art and science like you are, or are other artificial reef companies just building artificial reefs?
There's the most noteworthy one, if you look it up, there's a gentleman by the name of Jason DeCaris Taylor. He built the people underwater holding hands in Mexico. It diverted 50% of their dive traffic as a sculpture garden, as a public eco art.
Right, that's not my question.
Oh.
So he's an artist.
Correct.
But it made reefs, yeah.
Okay, but he has now created a company making reefs?
Correct.
Okay, so that is it. And then with the ones that you've done so far, where you're talking about Riviera Beach and other places, are these situations where the city has contributed, or are these private contributions where you've gotten the okay from either the county or the city to install them? How is it working financially?
The county's obviously always gives the okay. The county is the gatekeeper. There's been a mix of public and private. Our reef builder, the most noteworthy ones that he's developed were memorial reefs for people that lost loved ones. Andrew Red Harris, the family fundraised and contributed to the construction and worked in conjunction with the county to get the permitting and have that be approved. The way that we operate now in Palm Beach County, unfortunately, is not the same situation as in Broward County. Palm Beach County has a defined artificial reef program. They actually pay for our barge deployment costs, which was one of the most expensive parts, about $40,000. We understand that Broward County, unfortunately, isn't able to do that. So that's why we understand that Broward County is unfortunately not able to provide funds for artificial reefs at the moment. It's not outlined. So we're working with municipalities on funding to kickstart reefs, which will then be supplemented by private business donation grants and our nonprofit efforts, and we can do other funding as well.
Okay. And can you go back to the slide that had the $110,000 package? Oh, and while you're getting there, when you do the offshore reefs, is there any buoy requirements there, or it's only the one? Okay.
No,
okay.
not in the county.
Is this basically what you've proposed to Dania?
Dania has a different zone. Dania also has some different considerations. Every city wants something a little bit different. I would say this proposal for the city of Hollywood, wanting more of the nearshore snorkelable, these are lower profile, so they're smaller. They have different benefits. Dania has a different situation with regards to their beach and their sand and their dunes than Hollywood, thankfully. So it is similar. The pricing is similar, but this is the proposal that we gave for your nearshore, which from our discussions with the CRA, we understand is one of the bigger considerations for the city.
Okay. And you had mentioned, and I think I misheard, but I want to just get a clarification, that if you put something in 40 feet, it could be a waste of an effort or something along those lines. What were you talking
No,
about?
I was referencing that if we put the coral lock and we put the outplant coral to the near shore because of
okay.
the sediment flow, it's an
Gotcha.
issue. No, we are actually working towards being part of the Broward Special Activities License to transplant coral from the Port Everglades over into the reef zone in Dania. So that is
Okay.
definitely something we're actively engaged in.
Okay. And so something like these, they're a combination of close to shore and far out to shore, all of these packages, is that right?
No. So
This one
the
is just the
snorkel
in?
it would be within the snorkel zone. So it's,
okay.
I'm proposing about 15 foot, but that would be really dependent on the mean water line, all these different things that we're not at the stage yet
Okay.
to be able to
Then
really
can you go
discuss
to
that.
was there one that was a combination of near and far?
No,
Okay.
but just because the permit zone is a 40 foot, and then this one is so close in that to extend from one permit zone to the other, you'd have to cross the hard bottom reef, and so it wouldn't really be something we could do, with the exception of finding a zone where there is a break, and we have to have a 200-foot clearance from the hard bottom. So we really have to do a nice formal study of the area to really make sure that that's something we can do, and then ask for the permit to do so.
So I'm just going to throw this out there. When we were talking about the dunes a couple years ago, and it's coming to fruition now thanks to Lee Gottlieb, I had raised the idea of adopt a dune. And it's really happening. People want to, take the burden off the city and take care of these dunes themselves. Have you done anything like that, like adopt a reef through a city so that maybe the city undertakes these close shore ones, but we have a program for residents, for example, memorials, things like that, where people could subsidize for the offshore ones. So I'm just going to throw that out there, Susan and George, because maybe we start this and then we open it up, as we are hopefully with the dunes, we open it up to private investment and recognition.
And that's to some degree what we are in the works of doing, is connecting with those entities and requesting that. So we would definitely be open for a partnership in that matter.
Okay, so I would love to see something like that, because we have so many people that are invested in improving the quality of our water, and this is a way for them to make a financial commitment that's permanent, basically. Mm-hmm. And I just want to say, it's not a question, it's just such a cool thought for the city or the CRA to invest in this. And then just like we go back and we look at old pictures of what Hollywood looked like, and then we compare them to today, just the idea of like we would have these sea turtles, and then 20 years later, you just have this massive coral growth or whatever, it turns out to be. It's just a really exciting opportunity that's so closely jives with what we're trying to do here in Hollywood. So I'm super excited, and thank you for showing us what the potential is.
Thank you.
Any other board members for now?
Just have one question. The 5 sculptures, are those already prefabbed, or is it what we want?
It would be what you want.
Okay.
All right. Well, George, obviously an exciting direction, and I know you'll come back to us. You had mentioned, procurement directions that could need to be taken, et cetera. And so, keep us informed, please, on a bi-monthly basis on the progress, and ask us for feedback as needed. And looking forward to all of it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, board members, next on the agenda is our comments of ourselves, the General Counsel.